It was at Wagga Wagga in southern New South Wales that the very first field pea trials in Australia took place in 1894. Around that time, the sunshine harvester first began to rattle its way across paddocks. These days, it's a purpose-built mini-harvester that combs the Agricultural Research Institute's trial plots. Pulse Breeding Australia drives the pulse research done here. PBA is a joint venture between state agricultural agencies, the Universities of Adelaide and Sydney, Pulse Australia and the GRDC.
Some nice varieties coming through. I reckon they're about twice the height and bulk of the current old varieties. I reckon there's a goer there.
Yeah.
In a region where wheat and canola are the main crops, there's been a resurgence of interest in pulses. And the reason for that is continuous cereal cropping has depleted soil nitrogen levels, forcing growers to apply more fertiliser, and that's expensive and sometimes problematic.
Peak demand in that through post-sowing, that July, August, September period, urea is very hard to come by. The price generally fluctuates quite significantly, and generally always on the up. And also getting the reliable application, and that's one of the biggest issues, is getting farms getting bigger, so farmers are having to spread large areas in a shorter period, and actually getting reliable rainfall to come through and incorporate that urea is it's causing a lot of issues in terms of the efficiency of that urea.
While pulses are grown to the north, south and west of this region, what's discouraged southern New South Wales grain growers from including a legume in their crop rotations is a lack of markets and the necessary infrastructure and the region's unique red-brown acidic soils. Pulses came to Australia from the Northern Hemisphere, where they grow predominantly in alkaline soils. But with the National Pulse Breeding Program producing regionally adapted varieties, growers now have greater cropping flexibility, and that means less dependence on man-made nitrogen fertilisers.
A huge proportion of the air we breathe is nitrogen, and that's the fundamental source of nitrogen for bagged fertiliser. And we have these clever little plants called legumes which actually do it all free of charge and also produce a crop at the same time.
As a legume, most pulse crops are able to convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonium, a soluble form of nitrogen available to plants. Chickpeas, for example, will produce approximately 20 kilos of nitrogen per tonne of above-ground dry matter. However, as slightly more than half of the chickpeas' stored nitrogen is below ground, the resultant multiplier effect means the total estimated fixed nitrogen is approximately 40 kilos per tonne of dry matter.
One of the biggest positives with growing a pulse crop is that you don't have to put any nitrogen on the pulse crop, and generally the second crop after that you don't have to put any nitrogen on. So you've got 2 years of that one paddock where you don't have to top cress a nitrogen.
Canola and wheat cannot do that, only legumes do it. And so it's a much more reliable, secure, safe form of nitrogen to have it fixed in a legume, to make it available for the next crop and the subsequent crop after.
As well as providing an alternative source of nitrogen, pulses can be used to provide competition for weeds and deliver a cash crop. Newer varieties have been bred to allow herbicides to be applied to control in-crop weeds without inhibiting the pulse from reaching maximum growth.
Particularly in field pea and lentil, which are a very quick maturing crop, we've been focusing on developing very early varieties, so when they mature you can actually crop top or spray, control the weed without damaging the development of the grain, so you can actually take the crop through to full grain harvest and have total weed control of the resistant weeds. To me, that's having your cake and eat it.
10 k's out of Wagga Wagga, the Beck family has, like many in the region over the past decade, moved away from cereal and pasture farming systems to continuous cropping. But that's beginning to change.
This is our first year that we've grown a wheat crop on a pea crop, and it's probably by far our best wheat.
And having the main road run past the property, there's been a lot of calls from neighbours curious about the field peas.
Whether you fallow them out or harvest them is probably the main question. There's a lot of pretty common practice at the moment to fallow the field peas out, to sow them early and grow the biomass, which we did on the other side of the road here, but we fallowed them out, and probably 2 tonne to hectare potential of field peas that we've knocked out. So you'd be reluctant to just fallow a pea crop unless you're forced into doing it.
This season, the peas will be going to market, and Ben Beck's recommendation to other growers is to work pulses into their rotations.
They're easy to grow, and they extend our sowing window, so there's no pressure to sow them. They're always sown quite late. We try and harvest them between the wheat and canola, so they can fit into your rotation. They're not It's just got to have somewhere to store them, and yeah, be prepared to fiddle around a bit with get your header to set up right, to feed in right, and they should be fine.
These represent the 3 different types of peas that we grow and market.
The other message these research agronomists would like growers to hear is to treat pulse crops as seriously as they do wheat and canola.
Treat it as a main crop. Don't treat it as the last thing you sow, last thing you harvest. You've got to do things right, and you've got to do things well. And you might as well not grow it if you're not going to do a good job of it.
Pulse breeding has come a long way since 1894, especially in the last 6 years as a result of the industry partners' coordinated and cooperative approach. And with the National Breeding Program giving researchers what they need to tailor regional solutions, growers now have a more sustainable farming future, one in which pulses will have an important role, even in the unique soils of southern New South Wales.
They grow them in northern New South Wales, they're making a success of it, they do it in Victoria and South Australia. So these growers are now becoming really serious, and I think that's pretty exciting because they're going to do the proper job, they're going to make it work. And given new, more reliable, better disease-resistant, higher-yielding varieties with good market end uses, I think it's really optimistic.